All right, welcome to the inaugural or first Cream City Central live, breaking down the Packers draft. Obviously, this year is a super controversial draft to some to others it made sense. Obviously, to Brian Gutekunst, it made a lot of sense, and obviously to a lot of people in the media, they think Brian Gutekunst is very bad at his job. So here we stand in just a whirlwind of confusion because nobody really knows what to expect from this draft class come this year. And I guess we won't really find out for a couple of years how this is all going to pan out. But we're here to talk about it because we got nothing else to talk about. So kind of breaking down this draft, it's very important to point out that the Packers are planning for the future, we're talking future as in 2, 3, 4 years, not next season. So Greg, Sam, guys, what was your initial reaction to this? Because obviously a lot of people had a lot of things to say about it on social media.
I don't know. I mean, when it first happened, I wasn't mad, but also wasn't pleased with it. I kind of understood, like, hey, this is Rodgers. He's getting up there in age. Maybe makes sense to get Jordan Love, but yet again, he has 4 years on his contract. That's a long time, and I don't know. It's a weird situation. I mean, Jordan Love's talented, and looking at his highlights and everything, what he did in Utah State, it's very impressive. But you also have that need at wide receiver and maybe even some defense at linebacker and defensive tackle that it was so much talent there.
Yeah, and like I've said this before, like Jordan Love is the perfect quarterback to put behind a Hall of Famer and Aaron Rodgers. But like he mentioned, he has 4 years left, and if we were one game away from the Super Bowl, and like you trade up for a quarterback, and I think there were rumors what the Colts were trading up. There's no way the Titans would have taken a quarterback that early. They were one game away from the Super Bowl. So like a lot of people, even Packers Twitter, like they varied like throughout the past few days. They went from days 1 and 2, they were livid, over the roof, and then oh my God, Kamal Martin, a need that we actually need. But like I don't know, like as of right now, like I told you, Josh, before we went on air, I would give it like a C. I don't think it was bad, but I wouldn't say it was good. We definitely left some holes that yet need to be filled, like wide receiver especially.
Certainly. And the social media reaction I saw, like I wasn't surprised by what I saw. I was just nobody was taking the situation for what it was. The Packers are preparing for the future. I don't know. All right. So what are your guys' reaction to Jordan Love overall, though? Because obviously the Packers traded up to get him. And like Sam just said, it's not like the Packers went 4-12 and Aaron Rodgers can't throw anymore. They went 13-3, one game away from the Super Bowl, and Aaron's still playing at a pretty high level. I mean, did they jump the gun with this, or were they looking at it in a way that maybe they weren't impressed with the upcoming quarterback class of 2021? I don't know.
Yeah, and that's one way to look at it. I think I mentioned Arquette or something like that. Like next year's quarterback class is not very impressive. Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, and that's pretty much it. And I shouldn't expect the Packers to be in the top 5 next year in the draft. So they're kind of out of the question for that. And I don't think anyone knows about 2022's draft class with quarterbacks. Even next year, wide receiver class is pretty good. I mean, Justin Ross is coming out from Clemson. You got a few others like Seth Williams from Auburn and a bunch of Alabama receivers again coming out for the draft next year. So there's still tons. So I guess I don't know if they were looking in the future draft class. I don't think that should be a thing. But yet again, I'm not a GM, so I don't know. I do like Jordan Love. I think what Sam and pretty much everyone is saying, like he is going to be a guy that the Packers have to mold into the system. He had a great second year at Ohio State, but that third year with that 20 touchdowns, 17 interceptions, that's kind of a no-no, and he's going to have to learn from Aaron Rodgers. And come on, Aaron Rodgers, I think could be the perfect guy to learn from to limit those turnovers.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that 17 interceptions because people are basing his performance off of one season. And I want to say, like, I don't want to quote him word for word, but like I remember someone was saying that he like actually owned up to that performance that year, and like he was basically saying like, oh, like I'll learn from it, like I was making like kind of like careless mistakes, but like it's not like we're putting him in day one. Like 20 touchdowns, 17 interceptions. Yeah, he's inaccurate. But then he also NFL posted it. He put on his Instagram story. The dude has a cannon. He lofted a cannon 75 yards down the field. I want to say that might have been on his pro day actually. But I think Jordan Love very well could be our next successor. But again, like we have 4 years, and like you mentioned with the quarterback class next year, you've got Trevor Lawrence, you've got Jamie Newman out of Georgia now, and you've got Justin Fields. Those guys are going to be in the first round, and Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields very well both probably will be in the top 10 as of right now. And like we would have to lose, we'd have to not make the playoffs. I mean, I guess the Chiefs traded up 27-10, but like I don't know, like I think Jordan Love is the perfect guy to put behind Aaron Rodgers, but to me it's a little too early. And I again, like I think we're gonna like this pick in like 2 to 3 years. And I think Jordan Love is going to impress because I think Rodgers, I guess that kind of brings us to our next topic, like question is, do you both think that Rodgers is the guy to mentor? Because like a lot of people were saying, no, he's going to be in a Bears uniform next year, or request a trade to the Patriots. I read something earlier today. There was a headline that said the Broncos were ready to trade for him. But then the other half of the people were saying Rodgers has learned for it. Why would he go and do it to another quarterback? So, yeah.
I mean, I've seen like a lot of reactions about the Packers drafting Jordan Love, including the timetable of when will he play. You have to imagine that Brian Gutekunst thinks that Jordan Love is the successor, and therefore he won't wait 4 years to play Jordan Love because you're not going to basically wait his entire rookie contract. And I understand there's a 5th-year option for him to play before you want to sign him to a second one. So I would almost say that the most they would wait for Jordan to play is 3 years. Does that sound about right? I mean, what is your guys' take on this? Because I feel like even though some say there was no clock, there has to be a clock.
I mean, that was with Aaron Rodgers. He came in 3 years after he was drafted to replace Brett Favre. Now, the only difference is Brett Favre was complimenting retirement instead of signing a 4-year contract, or really the richest contract in NFL history at the time. But I think with Jordan Love, too, I mean, you got to look at maybe Tom Brady and Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, when they drafted Jimmy Garoppolo, it wasn't as big a topic, but Jimmy Garoppolo was one of the biggest prospects in that draft class at the quarterback position. The Patriots went after him. Thoughts of maybe Tom Brady, maybe he could be on the way out due to retirement. But no, that 3rd year, they traded Jimmy Garoppolo for a 2nd-round pick. I mean, I guess with Gutekunst, what he could be doing is just expecting something to happen with Rodgers. Injuries happen to a surprise retirement. I don't know. It's weird, but yeah, I think maybe 3rd year, there could be something where they transition to Rodgers to Jordan Love.
How do you guys think Aaron's going to react to all of this? Because the way that Brett Favre treated him wasn't great. And the first thing Aaron ever called Brett Favre was grandpa. There's a great book on that. And anyways, they obviously didn't have a great relationship. And Aaron didn't like that. And so I wonder if Aaron's going to be a solid mentor for Jordan Love. I know they've talked already. I don't know what was said. But how do you guys see this playing out? Do you guys think this is going to be drama city like the media wants it to be? Or do you think Rodgers is going to be cool, calm, and collected?
I did hear he called him. But yeah, like you said, they didn't mention like what they said or what their exchange of words were. And I know LaFleur was saying that like we all know like Rodgers is not like we want Rodgers to play, like retire as a Packer. We want him to play for as long as he can, as long as he wants. Part of me thinks like he's going to be a Packer for life, and like I kind of want to agree with the other side of the Packers fan base that I was mentioning, that he dealt with this stuff with Brett Favre. Why would he go ahead and kind of be that jerk to Jordan Love? And like to me, like I don't know, this kind of might be like a nitpicky thing for me, but like he restructured his contract too. Like And like some quarterbacks, like if you're making that much money, you're not going to want to be mentoring like someone like that either. But Aaron Rodgers restructured his contract last year. So like, I don't know if that makes it any better, but like, yeah.
Yeah, the thing is with Aaron Rodgers and Love is if Rodgers kind of treats, Love kind of like how Brett Favre treated him, he's kind of looking like a hypocrite a little bit, going back to those days. But I think Rodgers can open him up, and like you said, Josh, with the whole media thing, look what happened last year. LaFleur and Rodgers, are they going to get along and everything like that? I think the Packers organization, Rodgers, just accepts the media what they do, and time again, they always prove them wrong.
Did you guys listen to Aaron Rodgers on AJ Hawk's podcast? Did you hear what? I don't know if you guys saw this on social media, but what Aaron said about all the drama between him and Matt LaFleur?
I heard parts of it.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to say it the whole clip, but Rodgers said it was real quiet, wasn't it? That's the clean version of what Rodgers said, but he was making a point that there was no drama. So I guess time will just tell. We'll have to see how this plays out. I'm interested to see how it plays out, and I've actually talked about this for almost 2 years now. How is Aaron going to deal with the transition? And Goody's going to have his Ted Thompson moment, that's for sure. All right, moving on to another piece of drama. Besides the fact that Brian Gutekunst decided to shift the entire view of the franchise after night one, they didn't draft a wide receiver in this draft. A draft where I was like super optimistic, especially after the top 15 picks, that the Packers were going to land a sweet athlete at wide receiver. And turns out they didn't. They didn't try to in the first round. But the reports saying from Peter King, he talked to Brian Gutekunst saying, and Goody said that the Packers tried to trade up for a wide receiver in the second round. Do you guys buy it? And did Goody just give up because they don't have a wide receiver in this draft class?
I don't know if I buy it or not, because in the later rounds they still didn't take a wide receiver. Third, fourth, fifth, and sixth and seventh. But I kind of thought going into day two that, hey, maybe they could possibly trade up. I think the only difference is they're going to have to give up a lot of capital because all these teams in front of them needed receivers, and they were in the early second round instead of being in the middle or the late of later second round. So I'm not sure. It's interesting if they would have pulled the trade, how many picks they would have gave up a player. But I think it's an odd thing, just the whole draft process. Not even one receiver, and not even possibly in the late rounds.
Yeah, it's interesting. I want to know like what exact player he had the eye on. I almost want to say it was either Mims or a guy like Pittman, because all those guys started to go within the first 10 to 15 picks, and it was just not looking good for us. So I don't know if I buy that. Like I want to, like, I have a feeling had to be one of those two guys. I know Mims was kind of surprising. Mims fell that far. I know a lot of people saw him as first round potential.
Yeah, I just don't really know where Goody was going with that. It had to have been a specific player, I think, for him to really try to reach. And there was two receivers that he was eyeing up. So I don't know who those were. Obviously, Sam, you probably have a better gauge on that than I do. But I really don't know. And do you think the Packers are doomed at wide receiver at this point?
I didn't either. Yeah.
Do you think we're doomed? I mean, the media is painting it that way. I don't think we are, but Goody didn't really do anything besides add Devin Funches.
Here's the thing. I'm trying to be optimistic about it a little bit. Maybe understand the reasoning. Like you said, Devin Funches, that is a all-season acquisition for them. They're also getting Emenia St. Brown back. So look at that. That might be used as a draft pick there. And they also signed a guy from the Canadian Football League. So maybe they really believe in him. I forgot his name. You guys might know more of his name than I do. But so that's 3 new receivers right there. I don't know. I think it's a little bit of unproven talent right now. Maybe Funches, because he was a former second-round receiver, had a decent career with the Panthers. The other two coming off of injury and coming from the Canadian Football League. It's weird, but Goop might think that, hey, well, these are our receivers here. we still brought in some talent for Rodgers.
Yeah, his name was Reggie Beggleton, and I probably butchered that name, but I've seen some of his highlights. The guy can catch.
See, EQ Brown, I feel like some people still forget that we have.
Yep.
Coming off of an injury, I really think he's in for a nice year. We have EQ Brown, we have Scantling, obviously Adams, Lazard, and I know Goot was saying, like, I don't understand why he didn't take a receiver early, but as the round started going 4 and on, I kind of understood it because he was saying that he didn't want to draft someone because he didn't think none of those guys would make an immediate impact on our team. And like Greg said, we have a lot of unproven guys. And why draft another guy late when you can give these other guys a chance? I mean, we need more depth, but at the same time, we have unproven guys. And it's hard to understand it because we're not the GM, and like he would have done a better job than all of us would, but it's hard to understand why we didn't take at least one wide receiver in this draft.
Yeah, definitely difficult situation to swallow. We'll see how. I mean, I'm assuming at this point, Alan Lazard is wide receiver 2. He kind of has to be. After that, we have Jake Kumaro. EQ obviously is coming back from injury. Maybe Devin Funchess will be in the mix somewhere. So we'll see what happens on that front. Brett says, I was hoping for Denzel Mims or KJ Hill, I'm assuming. But I feel like after Mims was drafted, Brian thought after him being drafted, the rest of his receiver class has the same talent. I still am not losing hope on St. Brown. We hope for him considering not being able to play last year. Including picking up Darrell Stewart, which has a little potential. Is that rumor possibly trading for Curtis Samuel can be reality? Okay. That's a lot to unpack. Do you guys have any immediate reactions to that?
So, I mean, I have heard the rumors. I would imagine because they just paid Robbie Anderson, what was it, 10 million, 10 plus, and they still have DJ Moore. And I think it was Greg that said it in our chat. Like, if anything, he's the one that's on their way out. Like, I would imagine he wouldn't cost that much. I mean, maybe like a fifth and like another guy or something like that. And I think he would be a nice slot guy to put in there. Another guy that we could sign, who I really want would be perfect for us, is Taylor Gabriel. And I don't know if I mentioned this before, but there's a lot of like big name guys, like not necessarily guys that we need, but like Everson Griffin, Jadeveon Clowney. And like, because we're in the middle of a pandemic, like I feel like, because like they can't do physicals. So like there's a lot of players out there that probably teams don't know about still, or like physicals, or like they can't do physicals because we're in a pandemic. So it's keeping them from signing contracts.
Yeah, I heard a little bit about Darrell Stewart. He seems like a little potential that Brett said. I'd be keeping an eye on him throughout training camp, see how he does. I mean, Lazard was a big name last year, undrafted free agent. Here comes Stewart. It seems like Gutekunst, no, he might not draft wide receivers, but maybe he could find his talent throughout undrafted free agency. But Curtis Samuel, yeah, I heard rumors about that. I heard it could be a heavy price though. That was during the draft though. Maybe since it's over, could be something else. I know Andy Herman. One name that he threw out that I found maybe a possibility could be Julian Edelman. I'm not sure. I don't think the Patriots would ever make him available, but maybe contact the Patriots a little bit. They're losing everybody, might kind of be in that rebuild just momentarily. And Edelman's getting up there in age, but still one of the best slot receivers in the league.
For sure. And Brett says, is Kenny Stills a possibility? I mean, Bill O'Brien's basically just shipping out his entire team. So why the heck not try to get Kenny Stills off the Texans?
I mean,
Dexter Williams.
I mean, they have Cobb, and is Kenny Stills on the market? I didn't even read that. I saw someone else mention that earlier today.
Yeah.
But I didn't know if he was on the market.
I think with Houston too is that they traded for him last year. I don't think they would want to give.
Yeah, like I feel like they would
just like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, if Goody could pull Kenny Stills off the Texans, Sure. I mean, we'll see what he has to give up for that. Maybe future third, fourth round pick for that. I think because Kenny Stills is pretty good. But I mean, I don't even know. We'll see. We'll see if he does. Okay. Terry says dumbest draft ever. A lot of Packers fans happen to think that. And so we'll see. We'll see in a 2 or 3 years whether or not that it holds to be true, because that's the only time we're going to find out. All right. So somebody who the Packers drafted for in the second round could be a guy who replaces Aaron Jones, Jamal Williams. Obviously, that's A.J. Dillon from Boston College. I mean, I was surprised enough by the first round draft pick. Here comes the second round. I'm going, we're going to get ourselves a nice wide receiver here. Maybe a D-line interior linebacker. Nope, I was wrong again. Packers go with running back A.J. Dillon from Boston College. The dude's huge. He can plow people over. I saw a clip of him literally taking Jair Alexander back in the day and throwing him to the ground.
Mm-hmm.
That was awesome. I mean, he could be an exciting player.
He's a machine. Like, I can understand where it'd be a reach to draft the running back, but like, we have Jones and Williams up for contracts after this year. The running back position needed to be addressed. When I found out A.J. Dillon was drafted, I was shocked and I was very upset. This, I was shocked, but I just couldn't believe it was it actually happened. Like, this dude is a machine. I don't know if you ever watched, you saw the play. He was a lot of fun to watch in college.
Yeah, I'm a Clemson fan. So we had to face Boston College obviously once a year. So these past 2 years, Clemson's defense has been really good, but A.J. Dillon just always found a way to pick them apart just because he's so huge, hard to bring down, and he has good speed for his size. I mean, he's 250, 60 pounds, and that's just absolutely ridiculous. And when I wanted Green Bay to draft him like 2 years ago. The fact that it became a reality, I was like, when I saw his name, I was like, dang, that's pretty cool. But like, we have Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams, though. And Jones and Williams coming into a contract here. We just saw Christian McCaffrey get paid a ton of money. Jones might not be as much as him, but once these rookie contracts like McCaffrey and a couple others start reaching that, Aaron Jones kind of has that negotiation on his side to get that money. Jamal Williams, we'll see. I think one of them will be able to stay with Dillon, but I like what the Dillon pick, because that's a power back right there. And LaFleur had Derrick Henry in Tennessee, and this is his new version of Derrick Henry, of A.J. Dillon.
Yeah, Diamond says, I've noticed in every loss we had last year, we couldn't get the run game going. I seriously think that it changes with Dillon because he'll run through you. Takes 3 people to bring him down. You know what A.J. Dillon reminds me of? He reminds me of a leaner, faster version of Eddie Lacy.
Someone else said that as well, yeah.
All right. I mean, A.J. Dillon for sure is going to be an exciting pick. And I did hear a little bit about A.J. Dillon before the draft. I'm not a massive college football guy. I mean, I definitely don't have the brains and the encyclopedia that both of you guys have when it comes to college football and scouting. But I knew who A.J. Dillon was, but I didn't think he would be drafted in the second round. I just don't think running backs really go in the second round, obviously. The Chiefs took a running back in the first round. But out of all the Packers picks, I think I'm most excited for A.J. Dillon this upcoming season.
I think he might become a fan favorite pretty quick.
How do you think the Packers use him, though? Because there's talk of Aaron Jones being put in the slot. What do you think that we do with A.J. Dillon?
Yeah, when we drafted him, I thought, well, with A.J. Dillon, it could be a lot of interesting things we could do. You can have Aaron Jones in the slot a little bit. We saw him do that a couple times last year. Dillon, obviously the power back here, gives us more of that like 2 running back. Or when we're in the fourth quarter, and once we start getting into December, January football, you know who's getting the ball, and that's going to be A.J. Dillon. Jones is going to be the guy the first 3 quarters that just slashes up defense, and here comes that big running back, A.J. Dillon, in the fourth quarter, and good luck trying to tackle him.
I like what Brett was saying, like a double running back format. you want a guy on goal line, like H.A. Dillon is definitely a guy, like a powerhouse, definitely gets you there.
Yeah, he says that they could use him with a double running back format with Aaron Jones, obviously, protecting Rodgers. I'm interested to see how he does in pass protection, because my main hunch as to why the Packers haven't used Dexter Williams is because he can't pass protect. And I understand high school, college, you don't really need to pass protect as much, or it's not as important because you can just run guys over. But when it comes to getting to the pro level, that's absolutely essential to your role for most of the time as a running back, unless like you're Derrick Henry. But that's a good point. Good point. All right. I can see Dylan for those huge 3rd and 2 plays or those goal line carries. Can we say Kuhn runs? I think he could be that power back. Somebody compared him to Adrian Peterson this weekend. Do you guys think that's a fair comparison?
Yeah, here's the thing. Adrian Peterson coming out of college was ridiculous. I mean, he's ridiculous in the NFL, but I would not go close to Adrian Peterson.
I also don't like people. I don't like comparing players to like future Hall of Famers. I think that's bold, like especially when they haven't played it down yet. But I think he's going to make a pretty good impact on our team quick.
Oh, yeah. And, okay, so I think A.J. Dillon is going to be a pretty athletic running back for sure. I sound like Booger McFarland pointing out the obvious here. He plays running back, so he should carry the football. But in all seriousness, if Adrian Peterson is a 10, where's A.J. Dillon from like 1 to 10 on that scale? Because there's definitely, I see some comparisons between the two athletically.
I would say between the 6 and the 7 mark, he's big. He has that. He can break tackles easily. I want to see him more in the passing game, though. I think that's going to come down to A.J. Dillon's game. It's something that he's got to improve on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would give it about halfway as well, about a 6.
Yeah. All right. So one person who, so moving on, obviously. So A.J. Dillon's going to be super effective, but the third round comes, and the Packers draft a guy who could be an immediate impact, but also could be used at fullback, Kyle Kuschek style. Tight end Josiah DeGuara from, I hope I said that correctly, from Cincinnati. I mean, I've seen his tape. I didn't know much about him before the draft, to be honest. We all saw the tackle he made in that pick six, or that interception. I think he could be effective, but I don't know how effective. And I really still don't know how I feel about that pick.
I was a bit confused about that pick until I started to kind of like read more about him. And like I mentioned in our chat, like before we went on air as well, like there was a lot of like versatility and like versatile athletes and like that we drafted. And like in terms of like securing the future, like I wouldn't say it was a bad draft at all, but like I think a lot of this draft was to beat teams like the 49ers. Like look at guys like Deebo Samuel who are just absolute athletes. And at this point, we lost vitality to the Patriots. I think there's a very strong chance that we do see DeGuara as our fullback. And I want to say he's one of the only tight ends drafted out of Cincinnati. I want to say he broke the passing yard record for a tight end, and it wasn't Travis Kelce, it was Brent Selleck. I know LaFleur like definitely like fell in love with him. A guy that someone mentioned earlier, his like pass protecting or like I don't remember what it was, but yeah, I know LaFleur definitely fell in love with him. I was a bit confused at the pick at first. It's kind of crazy, kind of makes it seem like we drafted a fullback in the 3rd round. But yeah, I mean, I didn't think it was an awful pick, but I was very confused by it.
Yeah, and the thing like you mentioned, Sam, like they're trying to kind of be like the 49ers a little bit, be that athletic offense. And I mean, their fullback, if I botch his name, but Kyle Juszczyk, I believe,
yeah.
he does everything for the 49ers. Mm-hmm. Great blocker, great runner, great pass protector to catching the ball. And this kind of has the same familiarity with it. So, yeah, it's odd to pick a guy that we might use at a fullback more often in the third round, but the impact that he's going to make right away for the Packers, maybe it makes sense why he was drafted in the third round.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I didn't really understand it at first. I don't remember who said it first, but after I saw it, it made sense to me that Matt LaFleur is most likely making his imprint on this Packers offense. I find this to be the case. The Packers are just going to change the way they play football altogether. Do you guys think that's a good way to rationalize this? At least rationalize picking a running back and a tight end right off the bat.
Yeah, and I think part of that factor is Rodgers. Like, he's 36 years old and he's regressing. We're a run-heavy offense, a trend that's kind of spread throughout the entire division. So yeah, like I would agree. Like, I think we're going to see more throughout the next coming years up until Rodgers retires, until a lot more run-heavy.
Well, you got to see too with LaFleur. He was in Tennessee. They were a run heavy offense. He worked with Kyle Shanahan. He has a run heavy offense over there in San Francisco. And last year, it was kind of a mixture between, okay, we'll do what Rodgers does. We'll throw the ball a little bit. We'll also do that run heavy. Now, today, for next season, they're leaning more towards like, hey, we're going to run the ball more often.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of double tight end sets. Obviously, they're going to use A.J. Dillon in unique ways. And I'm excited to see A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones paired up. Not going to lie. Like, I'm pretty hyped for that because we already saw what Aaron Jones can do when he's basically unleashed. Add A.J. Dillon in the mix. I'm excited for that. But see, the thing is, too, is for the average NFL fan watching, it's a lot more fun to watch Aaron Rodgers throw 500 yards at a game to Greg Jennings, Donald Driver, and Jordy Nelson than it is for them to watch Aaron Jones run for a couple hundred yards a game, I guess, like maybe the average fan. But I think this is just going to be the way the Packers play, their new way of going about things. I really like it, though, because it's definitely Matt LaFleur's style and definitely takes the pressure off Aaron. And I think the way Matt LaFleur played offense last year was a mix between McCarthy and himself. Do you guys think they keep the McCarthy philosophy around or what was left of it around? Because this transition is coming fast.
I think he's trying to get rid of as much Mike McCarthy remnants as possible. You even saw when he got hired at first. He wanted to get rid of he wanted to start fresh.
Yeah, a little bit. He wants to pretty much have his own imprint of Packer football. I mean, the run heavy offense and everything. That's definitely not what McCarthy wanted. So you're seeing some changes in the offense, and to that point where yeah, it's fun to see Rodgers throw like 500 yards a game, but how frustrating to see a team run for 300 yards. I mean, we kind of saw it with the 49ers. They ran all over the Packers defense. It was frustrating because you couldn't stop it. Well, in Tennessee too, with Derrick Henry and the Patriots, it was frustrating for those fans where you have to stop that run. And Green Bay, they want to make defenses frustrated. And I think with Aaron Rodgers too, he's best at is that play action pass. So once they get that run game going, Aaron Rodgers play action. I mean, it's a little bit unfair.
Yeah. I mean, can you imagine A.J. Dillon, Aaron Jones tearing up the football field? They go to play action and Aaron hits a bomb to Devontae Adams. I mean, that could be a lot of fun to watch. Brett says, I promise next draft I won't say anything because every time I say a player the Packers should have gone, I call it the Brett curse. It's true. Brett did follow along with us for our basically 10-hour live stream over the weekend. And Brett did make predictions as to who the Packers should draft. And every time he made a prediction, that didn't come true. So kudos to you. Kudos to you. Okay, so finally the fifth round, comes around, and Brian Gutekunst addresses immediate need. I guess we can clap for that for those who really want it. Kamal Martin, late inside linebacker out of Minnesota. I live in Minnesota, so obviously I know a little bit about him. It was super fun watching the Badgers and Gophers play down in Minneapolis last winter. I miss college football already. So does inside linebacker Kamal Martin make an immediate impact? Because his draft grade, I looked up the scouting combine grade that everybody gets, and his was he has a chance to make the roster or the practice squad. So NFL.com doesn't think highly of him. Obviously, the Packers do. So what's your take on that?
Yeah, I don't know much about Kamal Martin, so I won't say much about him. But yeah, I saw the NFL.com thing, and I was like, not a great fifth round pick there. But I mean, we've said that in years past before, and those late round picks always become one of like the most notable ones too. So I don't know much about Martin, but immediate impact, maybe not, but maybe down the road, this could be a guy that we might look forward to as a backup linebacker, mostly special teams guy.
Yeah, and I don't know too deep about him. I know I think they looked at guys that were kind of excel in coverage more than they've had. And I think based on the depth that we have, I think he's going to be an interesting guy to watch in training camp. I think he could start out as like a special teams guy. Even Ty Summers as well. I know Ty Summers, again, another athlete that's played multiple positions. I mean, that linebacker spot's open. I mean, I think we can all assume it's probably going to be Kirksey, but at the same time, it's open.
Yeah. There's just a lot of concern there at the inside linebacker position. Christian Kirksey's obviously. Do you guys think he's in his prime yet? Because I don't believe so.
I mean, what, he's 26 around there. The thing about him is something to be alarmed about.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see what happens to the inside linebacker position because it's like you said, it's open. It's open. Okay. Kind of going forward here. Sam, this might have been a guy that you really liked. I can't remember. We were talking about it in our chat. John Runyon from Michigan. A lot of people were saying this is a great value pick. We'll see what happens there. Brian Gutekunst drafted 3 offensive linemen in a row. So
a lot of people thought this was a steal that he kind of fell this far too.
Yeah. Yeah, I think anytime that you can get a solid offensive lineman in the later rounds, that's a win. That's a win for sure. All right. Let's see here. All right. So the Packers, they go John Runyon from Michigan, Jake Hansen from Oregon. Do you guys want to talk about him at all?
He's interesting because I mentioned this before we went on. He played 3,500 snaps at Oregon, and of those, he only allowed 4 QB hits. And I was a big fan of J.C. Tretter before he went off to Cleveland because I like linemen that can play like any 5 spots on that line, and like that's what I think. That's what I think that Matt LaFleur and Goot put into perspective. And now a lot of people are saying if you could pick any of those 3 guys that can make an impact first, I think it might be John Runyon.
Yeah, and the thing too about these offensive linemen is you can never have too many of them. Injuries happen. We saw it a couple years ago before. Offensive linemen are any team, and Runyon and Henson. I mean, I like the picks and the stat, like you said, Sam. That's awesome stat, and obviously when I first saw it on Twitter, I was like, okay, I like what Gutekunst is doing with these late round offensive linemen.
Yeah, you have to have guys who can come in and back up. I mean, realistically, you want 10 Lucas Patricks on your football team that can just kind of float wherever and play wherever. That's why they sign guys like that. Now, Sam, I didn't know much about Jake Hansen really until the Packers drafted him. So I've heard the name, but I just didn't really know much about him. Okay, moving on. Simon Stepaniak, guard from Indiana. I've never heard of him. Do you have any comments on him at all?
This guy, guard or tackle? I thought it was
He might be a tackle.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know
tackle
too much about him, but yeah, I mean, I think at this point it's just building depth. The O-line is something that we've arguably struggled with the most injuries throughout recent years.
The Packers have him listed as a guard actually on their website.
Okay.
Oh. Yeah, I have a friend that goes to Indiana. I don't know much about Simon, but she was like, yeah, you're getting first of all, a very nice guy. He's great with the media. So he said, you guys want to ever reach out to him? He was a sports journalism man, so he'll be more than willing to talk. So hopefully maybe we can get him on some podcast or some interviews as well. But I think one thing with the picks too is if you look at Corey Linsley, he's in a contract year. Rick Wagner, he's up there in age, only on a 2-year deal. So this is getting some guys to just watch them a little bit, learn, and if anything for depth right now, but maybe later on, like, hey, these guys could be taking over if they can't reach an agreement with those guys heading into free agency.
Yeah. And then one pick I really like actually is Vernon Scott, the safety from TCU. Really athletic guy. I actually saw a lot of film on him. Didn't know much about him before the draft, but you have to think he's going to replace maybe what Tramon Williams did.
That was an interesting pick, and I know a lot of people were kind of pondering the fact there were a lot of mocks taking a Xavier McKinney with our 62nd pick. I know early ones had us with Grant Delpit. So it's interesting because it makes me wonder if Pettin kind of wants a guy like him as a hybrid guy or a guy to like kind of move around. Like you mentioned, like he's very athletic. So like he's a guy that we can maybe see kind of getting moved around that secondary. And I think he was projected to go undrafted. So I think even he was probably pretty shocked that the Packers did take a chance on him, thankfully.
Wow.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, with Scott, the one player that kind of reminds me of from this draft is I love this kid, Kyle Duggar. He's a guy that pretty much can play anywhere on defense. I think the only thing where Scott maybe couldn't play is linebacker, but he's a guy that kind of floats around, and if he has to play corner, he'll do it. Safety, a hybrid, he'll do it. So he's going to be a guy that Packers are going to love just because of how athletic he is and how many positions he can play.
And I'm hoping he does turn into what was Sam Shields. Obviously, he was undrafted and turned out to be a great Packer. I kind of hope that's the case with Vernon Scott. Going back to Stepaniak from Indiana, Brett says, I was listening to the Bill Michaels show, and he interviewed with the Indiana line coach, and he stated that he's a gym rat, has a very strong work ethic. He also stated with all 3 years he spent with him, he would advise him being a guard. So that's an interesting take. Billy Turner is going to have to be replaced at some point. Elton Jenkins is going to lock down that left guard position for a long time, I think. And hopefully he can be the guy. All right. So the last pick the Packers had was Jonathan Garvin, defensive end at Miami. I don't know anything about the guy, so I'm really not going to comment on him. If you guys have anything to add, because defensive end, we also have pretty solid edge rushers at the moment.
This is a guy I kind of seen. He could either make the bottom end of the roster or he can be a very reliable guy to have on the practice squad. He's only 20, so I think a lot of people were kind of surprised that he entered the draft instead of like kind of staying another year. And like D-line something we needed, so I don't know if he slide him inside. It was an interesting pick, but like Garvin specifically, I kind of liked it just because he kind of made a name for himself pretty quickly at Miami.
Yeah, I don't know much about him either. They're saying that this is a pretty good pick in the 7th round for the Packers.
Mm-hmm.
But mostly he's a guy that sits on the bench a little bit, depth, practice squad, but a guy. They make some good pass rushers out of the Hurricanes. So hopefully we could do the same with for the Packers.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with the edge rushing position, defensive end. I know the Packers run a multiple defense now, so it's kind of hard to gauge exactly where he's going to play because they literally are having Rashawn Gary change positions, and we'll see how that goes. But I just hope that position that Rashawn Gary is going to play, at least his own role, is elevated next year because the Packers definitely need that. And what if secretly Rashawn Gary is preparing to play inside linebacker? I don't know. The Packers had the 12th pick, obviously, 2 years ago now. But overall, was this a good draft class? Because it's obviously controversial.
I would go ahead.
For me, For
No,
me, I don't know. It's gonna be hard to tell because you could tell this is kind of like we're preparing for the future. So I don't want to give a grade on it like now because again they haven't played a game yet. We don't know what we're gonna get out of them. But I think with this draft class though, I think for the future it could turn out to be a disaster. But I also think this could be perhaps one of Goot's best draft class because he kind of was ahead of the curve, and we might see that maybe Jordan Love is the guy and AJ Dillon is that top back that maybe the Packers can get out of him.
Yeah, I think this could be the draft class where we look back on in like 2-3 years and like, wow, okay, we were definitely wrong about Goot, like about this draft class. And like I mentioned before, like if you want to win now, this is probably a really questionable draft because we were one game away from the Super Bowl and that nobody expected us to go with a first-year head coach.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to build for the future, I'd say it's a pretty solid draft. And like I'm still just shocked that we didn't draft at least one wide receiver. And I probably would give it maybe a C, C minus. I would say it's right in the middle.
Yeah, I think we're going to find out how good of a general manager Brian Gutekunst really is once Aaron Rodgers leaves, or he retires, or whatever way he leaves. So we'll see what happens then, because that's the transition that Ted Thompson made. Obviously, Ted Thompson, I think, was a good GM, but so far, I know I keep ranting about this, but do you guys think that Goody is a good GM? Because this is his second draft?
This is his third draft, yeah.
Third. Okay.
I mean, people were going on Twitter kind of going overboard and saying hashtag fire Goody just because of this draft. And Packers Twitter was all over the place. I mean, yeah, like Goot and Ted Thompson. Ted Thompson's a guy that relies on free agency, or not free agency, sorry. He relies on the draft to win the Super Bowl. He didn't make any splashes in free agency. Is Goot a good GM? If we didn't have Goot as a GM, who knows? We probably wouldn't have guys like Za'Darius and Preston Smith, Adrian Amos, Billy Turner. Goot is a very good GM. And it's early. It's his third draft.
110% agree on that too. And here's the thing. No one knows what the Packers are like, what they do. And that's, I think, what makes them unique. They have their own style of winning. It works for them. I trust him. Gutekunst is a good GM. We just have to give it time. I think Packers Twitter, one thing that's kind of bad about it is we overreact sometimes. So we'll see in the next couple of years. And hey, the Kansas City Chiefs past few years haven't had a first-round pick, and here they are, Super Bowl champions. So sometimes that first-round pick doesn't really make an impact right away, and hopefully maybe this year we can say the same thing.
Look at John Lynch too, and like with the Niners. If I remember correctly, a lot of Niners fans were not happy when he was hired as GM, and he brings them to a Super Bowl 3 years later. So, yeah,
I think so far so good with Brian Gutekunst. He's impressed me in terms of who he's brought in, because certainly the Smith Bros have been a saving grace for this defense, kept this team alive. Adrian Amos obviously made a good impact. Billy Turner was decent. And you have to imagine that if we still had Ted Thompson, things would be different. Honestly, I don't think John Elway, in my opinion, is that great of a GM. I feel like if we had hired, I know this is impossible, but let's say there's a situation where we hired like a John Elway, we'd be on like our third quarterback by now in like 3 years, because he's so quarterback happy over there. I actually predicted the Broncos were going to draft a quarterback, and they didn't. I was hoping they would, because it's funny. But I think Goody is a good GM so far, and what we've seen with him and Russ Ball, especially managing the cap space, making sure we don't kill our cap space, has been brilliant. And but at the end of the day, time will tell. And can Brian Gutekunst have a bad draft class and still be a good GM overall in his tenure with the Packers? Absolutely. So even if this draft class doesn't pan out, doesn't mean he's a bad GM. If the next 2 or 3 draft classes don't pan out, then we probably have issues.
Different discussion.
Right. So only time will tell. I mean, people are still hating on Rashawn Gary. I saw a tweet about Rashawn Gary this weekend. I'm assuming it's because they're frustrated with Goody's draft picks. I'm assuming that's why. And we'll see how good Rashawn Gary is in the future, and only time will tell, like I said. But we'll see what happens, because as long as the Packers are winning, then everybody's happy, right? At the end of the day. All right, guys, that's all I got for tonight. Do you have anything else to add? Any final thoughts on this draft? Because a lot of people are heated about it.
I'm ready for AJ Dillon.
Yeah.
I'm ready for 70,000 screaming Packers fans at Lambeau Field with A.J. Dillon running over Khalil Mack. I want to see that, honestly. Great. All right, guys. Greg, Sam, thanks for so much for coming on tonight. For those who follow us for the last hour, thanks for watching. Heading over to creamcitycentral.com. We got a fun, an interesting interview dropping tomorrow with a person who plays an important role on the Packers football team. So see you guys then. Hey, have a good night.
You as well.
See ya.